not collect $200. Do not collect Gondor.
Did they ever make a Lord of the Rings Monopoly?
Yes, I think I have one. As a matter of fact, I should bring it in sometime.
Yeah.
If, dear listeners, welcome to Semi-Bookish. If you don't have a clue already, we are going to be talking about Lord of the Rings today. And J.R.R. Tolkien. What does the RR stand for? I did look it up today, but...
Ronald Rule.
Ronald Rule. Ronald is so basic, but then you get to Rule. It sounds very...
Ronald is base. Is it? I mean, he's just
I think about, like...
a Brit, you know.
I think about a clown.
Oh my gosh, of course you do.
Rule the clown. Anyways, let's quickly go
Rule
around.
the clown? That's the it clown, right?
It is I, Andy, your wonderful daddy of the dungeon.
Yes.
And to my right, we have...
Lord Ish.
That is Grant. You've met him before. You love him. He's a dreamboat. Across from me is Tony.
Mm-hmm.
What's your nickname?
I'm not saying it.
The mouth from the south.
I don't like this nickname.
Tony is never at a loss for words. Never.
Do you want a new one? We'll come up with a new one later.
Okay.
And to my left, we have...
I am the supreme overlord of everyone and everything. I am Aaron. Hello.
Awesome. And what are you playing, reading /
Me? Book-wise, I just got it, so I haven't actually started it yet. But I'm kind of on a nostalgia binge, and so I have the comic book series for Gem and the Holograms. And then I'm also gonna start. I'm gonna start watching the cartoon as well, cause 80s cartoons are my jam. And then
Right, it is an 80s thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then I'm currently replaying through Skyrim because my friends and I are going to be playing through it when I get to Portland in October. We're also, for Tony's amusement, because they have talked about it before, apparently also we are setting aside time specifically because Gotham Knights is coming out while I'm there. So we are pausing everything to play Gotham Knights.
Gotham Knights is a month away.
Yeah, I got told in the group chat, there's Gotham Knights, we have to play it. And I was like, okay, as long as you let me play Saints Row on your thing. I don't care.
I have just ascended.
So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Tony, what are you doing?
Hold on. I'm
Dun, 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 dun.
looking up the Gotham Knights release date just to be sure.
Wait, there's time outside of the podcast.
Okay, all right. No, I just need to reconfirm because for a while it was November, but they jumped.
Weak in the knees.
God bless television.
October 21st.
I know, but that's because the TV show is coming out soon, and they are not gonna make it. Anyway, thank you, CW.
You're welcome.
Okay, so what am I doing? I am listening to the audiobook for Eye of the World, which is the first Wheel of Time book, because I just rewatched the show, and it's so good. I liked it the first time a lot. Second time, it's even better. It's so juicy, so I am enjoying listening to the book again. And the thing that I remember about enjoying this book is once you're in it, you're in. Like I'm in love all over again, like I was when I was 19 the last time I read it. So that's fun. What am I playing right now? Oh gosh, I'm slightly annoyed with what I'm playing. I'm playing Marvel's Avengers.
Oh yeah, you told me about this the other day.
Okay, so the campaign actually is not bad. Initially, I thought it was going to be cheesy, but actually it's not bad. So you're going through and you're assembling the Avengers, but you're Miss Marvel.
Okay.
So you're Miss Marvel, brand new to superpowers, and the government is hunting you down because
that's what they do.
Of some foul stuff that happened on Avengers Day 5 years ago, and Captain America was killed. But
Oof.
You, as Miss Marvel, have footage to prove that the person responsible for the death of Captain America has been bankrolling the government trying to hunt you down. So, you have to go find the other Avengers and
Prove your innocence.
Put them all together and do the whole thing. Right, yes. And the first one you find is Hulk, so I'm, running around fighting with Hulk right now, which is actually really fun. So it's fun. The problem that I have with the game is that it is massively oversized, and I think because they wanted to merge two different kinds of engines into one game, and I don't know why they did it. Like, it's a cool concept, but it's annoying.
It's like what, like a 900 gigabyte game?
So they're taking it's bonkers. It's a huge game, like 95 gigabytes, and they're taking the whole like action adventure thing and merging that engine with like the battle royale kind of thing. So there's like a whole like series of battle royale things that you have to be certain like levels to do, and you can play any character and you can pick your team and you can go whatever. And then there's the other stuff, which is like action adventure. You know, you're on a quest to go find
item.
The
Fetch quest.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So it's like both games in one big giant game, which I'm sure they thought sounded cool. But I want the space on my Xbox back, okay? Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, I'm just like...
When you have to get an external hard drive just to play a game, it's problematic.
Especially when it's this game. I mean, have you seen the graphics on this game? Like...
They're pretty laughable.
They're not great. And it's like, really? We're in 2022. We're a whole, you know, how many phases into the MCU? Come on.
Well, I mean, and if we're being honest with the reception that game has not really gotten. I mean,
right. Yes.
And the fact that they're charging, I think it's on PSN, because I'm tempted on getting it. Why? Because it's $2 on the PSN store.
It's worth for $2, honestly.
Fair.
It is worth it because I got it for like $25.
Okay, but is it $2 on Steam?
But I was not going to pay full game price for that game, despite how big it is, because it's not worth that much. Like, Skyrim is worth that much.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's still $40 on Steam. Not worth it. I'm going to get Spider-Man instead.
I will steal this from Tony. I am reading right now. Actually, I have not started it yet.
Sorry, your aunt.
I am exactly in between two books. Like the other day, I finished. I'd have to look up her name, the author's name. Amanda Montell's Cultish: The Language of Fanaticism.
Yes, I love that one.
It's not nearly as infuriating as I thought it was going to be. It talks about the approach,
language,
the impact that language has specifically, whether it be in pulling people into the classic Jim Jones, the Jonestown cult, or fitness on Instagram, or as a mindset they like in CrossFit,
or like all those stupid like
Amway
Instagram stories that you see with all these like. Not all those who wander are lost.
Oh, they talk about that too, and link it to religion. Like it's a wonderful. It's a quick book. It's not too. It's not too lengthy. Fast paced. The audiobook was wonderful narration. Yeah. So I think I would have enjoyed reading it as well. I recommend it. Cultish: The Language of Fanaticism. I'm still thinking about it like a day later, like, wow, because I wasn't as angry. Like, I have a degree of sympathy why people get roped into quote-unquote cults. I'm about to start reading. I might start it tonight. It's been a few years. Dream Country, The Sandman, Volume 3 by Neil Gaiman. Thank you, Netflix show, for making me want to go through it all over again. And which is an excellent show. Even if it never deviates from the formula too much. Like, there are a few things that are different, but nothing that big. But I don't care. I'm eating it right up. But I'm a little light on what I'm playing, reading, and so on. So it'd mean listening to, because I'm not listening to anything right now.
Lord Ish.
Okay, I'll talk for a little while.
Timer set. You get 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll start with what I'm playing.
Here's your 2 animal crackers for the fight.
I don't get any animal crackers?
You can have an animal cracker.
No, it's too late. So,
what are you playing?
I caved. A lot of people I know really enjoy Elden Ring, and so I and, have you played Elden Ring?
I own Elden Ring, but I have not dared try it
yet. It seemed, from what I read about it, to be a more approachable Dark Souls-esque game.
I was going to ask if you're a Dark Souls person. Have you?
I love the aesthetic and everything, and I got farther in the first Dark Souls than I thought I would, but I've never beaten one.
Right. Yeah.
But so far, Elden Ring's really, really fun.
Is it? Oh, good.
It feels much more open than the other Souls-esque games. What's the term, Aaron?
It's Souls-like.
Souls-like games.
I'm waiting for Bloodborne to come to PC.
Oh, Bloodborne! I forgot.
I want Bloodborne to PC.
Okay, so
whoever the developers are, please bring it to me tomorrow.
Yeah, but the world's beautiful. Just
Yeah.
kind of exploring it, and yeah, I mean,
The tutorial monster.
I've ran into a few things that I'm like, okay, I'll come back to that later. But
Nice.
I really like it. And I just finished reading Amygdalatropolis by B.R. Yeager. It's a very short but very impactful book.
Okay.
I need everyone to know that Tony's face made the whole entire thing better.
What is it about?
So, well, you kind of know what you're getting in for, because I read an interview with the author.
Of course, right, yeah.
Previous, prior to reading it, and the cover's kind of surreal, and it turns out it's a picture of a like ringworms coming out of some intestines. It's hard to tell, like, close up. But anyways, that's kind of the primer for the vibe that we're going. Like,
Yeah.
so we're following.
Oh God! Are you kidding? I just looked at the cover. I'm traumatized.
I'm sorry. So we follow a nameless, anonymous protagonist.
God.
It kind of it kind of shifts between these online logs.
Oh.
On like an anonymous forum site, not on like 4chan or something.
Interesting.
And it just it just kind of explores the depths of how bad things can get.
So are we exploring the dark web in this?
We are, yeah, more or less.
That's cool.
We love that.
Definitely not for the faint of heart, but it. Oh yeah, and I was saying it shifts between that and like some kind of more omnipotent narration.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of drifts into almost like quasi poetry sometimes. Not maybe that's the wrong term, but you just kind of have to. It's unique. You have to.
Yeah, it's sort of like a.
It's an experimental novel.
Yeah,
for sure.
okay.
But
Yeah.
it was good.
Cool.
Recommend
Nice. All right. Very cool.
I do need to play
Very cool.
it. It looks very good.
Elden Ring.
Yep. It looks beautiful, but
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I just.
I've likened it more in my mind. What I've seen is more Skyrim-esque than the Souls-like.
No, it's definitely Souls-like.
Okay.
It's definitely Souls-like.
It is more open, like I said, though. Like you
Yeah,
feel like,
it is more open. It's just
And
Right.
visually,
And-
I think it's just lighter.
I haven't.
It is.
Yes, it is, and I haven't had as much trouble with this as I've had with the other ones.
Oh, good. Yeah. So that
Me
that
personally,
helps because I don't like hard games.
Yeah.
if you buy a PC though, it does lag quite a bit.
Okay.
But that's just because there's some weird engines.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't cap it so in the PC version they forgot to make a cap for the frame rates, and so occasionally your graphics card, the newer ones, just kind of hate you and decide to randomly lag in the middle of what you're doing, and so you're like, you can't do this to me, I'm busy fighting something, and then you die.
Sure.
But it doesn't do that in like the console versions. So
you know, you win some, you lose some.
What's coming out? Is it 48 days now?
38
Days.
38
No,
39
like
hours?
Hours.
Yeah.
Because.
Oh, whoops. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
His birthday's on
Wrong.
Friday.
Wrong time.
28 hours, 38 minutes, and about 25
Yeah, because
seconds.
technically they're doing it tomorrow because they're like, why have something on Friday that you can have on Thursday?
Right.
Because that's
And
what the
unlike
countdown says on Amazon right now.
And unlike those stingy Westerosi people over there on HBO Max,
Trade.
Rings of Power on Amazon Prime is giving us 2 episodes to start out with. So, you pick your property. You pick where you want to live. Middle Earth or Westeros. I don't know. Just...
So, what is the full title? It's Rings of Power, or is it Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power?
It's just
or
Rings of Power.
Just Rings of Power.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what is it about?
On that note, I've really stepped away. I think I've told you this before. I'm not watching much. Like, I see little clips here and there. Because I want to take it all in.
So, Rings of Power basically follows the Second Age from the perspective of Galadriel, who I want to say she was alive. I think she was alive the entirety of the Second Age. I actually don't know. I just know that it's essentially Galadriel discovers that Sauron's been up to some business with these rings of power, because he gets up to them, like the whole rings of power business in the Second Age, he's been up to that. He has like 16 rings of power in secret for hundreds of years.
So this is before they've been spread among the
Yeah,
different
this is
races.
before he like uses them to seduce. Like the ring wraiths aren't even a thing yet. Like he hasn't seduced anyone with them yet. He hasn't like tried. So like, I guess we're starting at the place at which he's starting to try, and Galadriel sniffs it out and is like,
Excuse me, sir.
right?
what you
Because
doing,
Galadriel
like-
is one of the few who like doesn't. Like the huge chunk of the elves are just like, hey, we like this ring guy. He's kind of cool because they're the ones who taught him to make them in the first place. So we get to see that whole thing.
For the babies like me at home who don't really know too much, is this a prequel or a sequel? Like
It's a
is
prequel.
It,
So
like is
the
this
Lord of the Rings-
before?
So the Lord of the Rings takes place in the Third Age,
Okay.
and Rings of Power takes place in the Second Age.
What about the Hobbit?
The Hobbit is Third
Age,
Age.
too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is all before our main.
All before our
Like
main-
2 or 3,
yeah.
4,000 years.
Yeah, so
Okay.
so the great thing about the Second Age is something that like is found in a bunch of Tolkien's notes, sort of scattered all over the place. But I forget which publisher is doing it, is producing a book that's coming out in November where they basically compile all of the stuff that he wrote about the Second Age into one book, so that you can just go to the one book and find it, and it's notes and stories and timeline pieces.
Numenor?
Yeah, the Fall
Yeah.
of Numenor. Yeah. So it's just all that.
Does the Silmarillion in case, like, does that cover the Second Age?
There's
too,
a huge
or-
chunk of the
Harper
Second Age
Collins.
written about in the back of the Silmarillion.
Okay, I've
There's
never
a whole
read it.
part of it. Yeah, there's a part called The Rise of Numenor, and then there's part 2 called The Fall of Numenor.
The answer to your publisher question is HarperCollins.
It's HarperCollins. Of course, it's HarperCollins.
Kind of interesting little thing where I was thinking when you were asking a question. In terms of the race spectrum within, Gandalf and Sauron are of the same Maiar. Isn't it Maiar race?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sauron is technically probably, if we're going to look at it that way, he's a cut above within that
I
race.
think a little bit, yeah.
But like, I there's so much expansive knowledge. Like, I had some questions like about the knowledge. Like, how does it? I want to see someone bring it all together into, because I know we got the Silmarillion.
Technically, Christopher Tolkien's second son, I think, did that with.
Yeah.
There's a whole series of. There's 12 books called. Oh my gosh. The Histories of Middle Earth, I think, is what it's called. Where he basically takes all of his dad's like leftover notes, because they were all posthumously published.
Yeah.
The Silmarillion was also posthumously published, so that was published as the Silmarillion, whereas the rest of this was notes, outlines, ideas, thoughts, stories that were unfinished, and he just compiled them all together and edited them and worked with a few people who who were big
The
fans.
History of
who
Middle
knew-
Earth?
Which
No.
one?
History of Middle
Yeah,
Earth?
History of Middle Earth. Yeah, there's like 12 of them. And so he just sort of published them, after Tolkien had died, I think the decade afterward. And so they're out there. It's the kind of thing that if you're an uber nerd, you want to make sense of in your own way. And what they really are, having looked at enough of it, it's just Tolkien trying to figure out how to tell Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So, it was never his master plan to be like, I'm gonna build every single age and tell a story within every single. It's like, no.
What's fascinating though is about it, and this is for me part of the allure to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit as well.
Yeah.
And approach to Tolkien is that I'm imagining him maniacally. He's at the pub one day, has an idea, write that out on a napkin. He's just like, I can imagine, like, it's almost like that little meme, the Charlie Day meme, where he's explaining it, and he's got the cigarette in his hand, and he's arms waving frantically, and Tolkien trying to explain, like.
So the author of Howl's Moving Castle, Diana Wynne Jones, went to
Okay.
Oxford. She took his lectures,
Mhm.
and she said he always talked super close to the blackboard, like as if the blackboard was touching his nose, and he never raised his voice very highly, and you could barely understand anything he was saying. And he always seemed as if, her and Philip Pullman both said this, they said he always spoke to people as if he wished he was somewhere writing The Lord of the Rings. So
Like, I got something better to be. Like,
yeah, so he was just sort of a man obsessed for
but
12 years or something.
I can really. There's a lot of stuff that I want to create. Like I haven't sat down to actually write anything concrete up, but like I have all these little in my little word journals and little journals, like notes all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I mean, you see my desk upstairs, like it's covered in notes.
Yeah.
And that's like I'm passionate about work, but like there are nerdy things that so I really, when I come to like thinking about Tolkien and his writing, like because it's a gold standard amongst fantasy literature.
It's so interesting. It is. And I think I knew this was going to come up. I was prepared. What's interesting about Tolkien to me in terms of being a standard bearer is how close he came to not being a standard bearer, despite always being brilliant, right? I mean, he was always the Oxford scholar guy. He was always the guy obsessed with medievalist literature. He was always obsessed with languages, which is why he was obsessed with medievalist literature. Like, he had the whole stable of things that he needed to do what he ended up doing with Lord of the Rings. But I think what often happens, and this is just what happens over time, is that someone does something because they're an obsessive nerd who gets picked on by other, Oxford professors. Imagine this. Imagine going to work every day and everyone you work with thinks you're just the biggest dork in the world. But imagine that the place where you're going to work is one of the best known universities in the entire world.
Filled with the biggest nerds.
Yes!
So
and so you're the nerd of the nerds.
Would you like to infiltrate, go back in time, invent time travel, go back in time, talk to these people that are harassing him, say, look, who are you? He's going to be something.
Well, but even when the books were, like, once the books were published,
yeah,
their critical response to it was, oh, good job. Like, they didn't really, like, care. They were just kind of like, all right. So he wasn't crazy. He was actually writing a book. All right. And most of them didn't read it. They just didn't care, that he was this literary sensation. And it's like, you really see, what?
I mean, that's what happens a lot with, like, great, influential works, but it's just hard to, like, think about it, like, with how deep that world is and how, I mean, how new it seemed, I imagine it was. Just everything coming together.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of shrugged it off.
Well, and I think, too, part of it is because, part of what makes it work is the fact that a lot of his students talked about how, whether for good or for ill, the ones who became fantasy writers tend to love this, and the ones who didn't tend to hate it. He refused to teach anything literary beyond, like, the 12th century or something like that. Like, he absolutely refused. Like, you are not bringing that in my classroom. So they never got Jane Austen. They never got Dickens. They never, not in a Tolkien class, like, at all. He was like, that is not literature. It is not good. It is not quality. I will not teach it because it's not doing the things it should be doing.
Wait,
I was just
he sounds like one of
those... He, way back, like 12th or 13th century,
Yeah,
he would not teach beyond that.
Go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
He sounds like one of those teachers that you see in, like, now in school who are like, you bring in your graphic novel and then you sit there and you just see them immediately look at you and go, they go, no, absolutely not. That's not real literature. You can't have that.
Yes.
He sounds exactly like that, and it's just like, he's just one of those professors that you have today who you sit there and you're like, yeah, but I want to read this book. And they're like, no, you can't read that. You have to read To Kill a Mockingbird because that's a classic. And you're like, but this is cool. I want to read that instead. And it does the same thing.
And it's, I mean, obviously, it's a deeply problematic, like, from a literary perspective, it's like, okay, bro, really? But at the same time, because that was a rule that he imposed on his students and therefore himself, he was able to really, like, tunnel down deep into this thing for 12 years, and he was surrounded with nothing but the language of the times, of these times that he's pulling from, the poetry from those times. I mean, all of that stuff is why The Lord of the Rings sounds the way that it sounds. It's because that's all he read. Like, and obsessively, like, he would go over the same poetry over and over and over again, retranslating it.
I think the real question is so he was like that while he was writing Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. Did that change after he was done with Lord of the Rings?
You know what? I don't know.
That is the big question. That's the elephant that is in the room.
But by contrast, Lewis was the exact opposite. Lewis,
like C.S. Lewis,
was obsessed with Bleak House. He read. He read books that he hated, just because he was like, well, I need to know. He was just much more open about these kinds of things than Tolkien was. So, but I think, in terms of him being a standard bearer, it's interesting because there was fantasy before him. Mm-hmm. Especially in the late 19th century, early 20th century, it was there. The problem is that the entire literary world did a cold turn at the turn of the 20th century, to where Virginia Woolf and James Joyce thought Dickens was laughable. They were like, what is going on? This man with wild characters with ridiculous names that give you easily thought out plot structures. He's not a genius. He's just telling you how the story's going to go before you even get there. Which is nonsense, right? None of us thinks of Dickens that way. But the turn of the century, early 20th century writers were all about a whole shift in style.
Well, deviating a little bit from Tolkien for 3 seconds, but wasn't Dickens lauded as creating first children's, probably the father of modern, or the father of children's fiction?
He, I think Marlon James said that he feels very strongly that Dickens invented childhood in literature, just because you didn't have kids. Nobody wrote about kids in novels. If they did, something bad happened to them because they were a kid. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna throw this in the weirdest turn because I had to look up when they were released because you were the turn of the turn of the century.
Yeah.
You know what's really hilarious is they all were turning away from the fanatical, the fantasy aspect of things, and they're like. Meanwhile, you had all of the art people immediately turning their back on the main literary structure of things, and they went complete avant-garde with things, and they were like, "LOL, this toilet is a piece of art that I just randomly yanked off the wall." And then we have, that's an actual piece, by the way. And then we have Pollock, who's like, "LOL, I don't want to do that." What I want to do is get really into Freudian psychology, stand on a ladder, and pour car paint on a giant canvas, and that's it. That's the piece. Mm-hmm. I don't have anything else to tell you about it. And so there's a complete, utter divide, and it's hilarious to me.
Yeah. So, I think, and Tolkien had read, and even cites in some of his essays, certain writers who really, William Morris was a big one. Yeah. Bigger for C.S. Lewis than for Tolkien. But the big one for Tolkien was E.R. Edison, who basically did Lord of the Rings before Tolkien did Lord of the Rings. He just wasn't as thorough and obsessive. But also, I don't know, I honestly think the thing that makes the Lord of the Rings a standard is the fact that, like everything else in fiction at the time that it was published, he wrote a post-war novel.
Yeah.
He just happened to write the best one. That's better than Catch-22, better than Norman Mailer. But there were some heavy hitters writing some, pretty notable post-war fiction. Everyone read Lord of the Rings, and people who really enjoyed reading read Norman Mailer. It's a whole just different vibe, and so you get. I like the idea of him being a standard bearer, but the thing that I get irritated by is when people are there's this whole thing of he carved fantasy fiction out of the stones of Oxford, and it's first of all, no, and second of all, he had help. There were tons of people after Lord of the Rings that was published who were in publishing going, this stuff sells. Imprint, and so 6 imprints within 5 years of Lord of the Rings being published.
There is some discussion out there because he is the standard bearer for and he will be for how many years to come. But I have read recently, because I was kind of doing a little bit of work for this, the more clearly designated the father of modern literary fantasy.
Mm.
Or
Mhm.
I mean, I
fantasy
feel like
literature.
that's more true than.
And that could be a little bit more
Mhm.
accurate, too.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, there were things, like, I mean, we've talked about Gilgamesh. I mean, if you're going to go back,
Right.
there's that Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Could, is fantasy.
Heck, any mythology.
Yeah.
But I think this thing, yeah. And I think for him, too, it's like, it's not, I think what a lot of people don't really understand, it's not just the books themselves, even though obviously it's the books themselves. It's the fact that he knew what he was doing. Like, he was writing behind his own back almost. Like, he's trying to solve the problem of how to, why are there so many poems in the book? Because that's what he was reading, and he was just like, how do I do this and not really irritate my readers? Or, furthermore, he was really more thinking, how do I get the spirit of the poems without having to write poems, because he thought he was a bad poet.
Random little inflammatory thing that I saw online. This is way back when. It was on Twitter, I believe. And okay, if you were to cut out any chapter from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, what would it be, and why is it Tom Bombadil's chapter?
Actually, that's funny. It's funny that yes, but actually,
I liked it though.
I do have a chapter that I tell people to skip when they're starting Lord of the Rings, and it's the first one.
Wait.
Why?
Called Concerning Hobbits.
Oh,
Why?
yeah.
Because it's boring. It is literally, first of all, it's like 25 pages. And it's nothing but info dumping, but done in a Hobbit bar. So it's a bunch of hobbits telling you all about Hobbiton, getting drunk, for 25 pages.
So this is your trailer to the TV show when they walk in and then you hear all the gossip as you're walking around type deal?
Yeah, it's so bad, and it's bad because it's just like, if you skip it and you just start with Bilbo starting a party, it works. You're good. You're good to go. You could.
I think the audiobooks typically skip on Concerning Hobbits. At least the one I listened to.
That's interesting.
Probably, even though it's called Chapter 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so dull.
I do need to read the second one soon.
Two
I've read the books a number of times.
We
over
have
the years,
them. They're
but,
upstairs.
I think it was a year ago when you and I were going to do this fantasy thing list.
Yeah.
I did jump on the Lord of the Rings book.
Oh yeah.
And because I've never listened to the audio.
Mm.
I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't amazing narration, but it was good.
Was it the Andy Serkis one?
No, because dear Lord, I want them.
I want that one.
Oh.
Actually,
I
will have that.
yeah.
That's my birthday gift
I-
for myself.
Actually, I think I need to add that to my Amazon wish list now.
Mhm.
But because he would do a stellar job. Because what little I've heard, he's got a good voice.
Yeah.
He needs to do more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do like a little Tom Bombadillo.
See, now I'm looking up this ER Edison
I mean,
guy.
Tom
Later.
Bombadil's hilarious. So the thing about that chat, because I read Fellowship last year for the first time all the way through.
Yeah.
So yes, people, I've read a lot about Lord of the Rings, including many, many essays and letters by J.R.R. Tolkien himself. Have not finished the trilogy. It's
Fight
fine.
you.
It's fine. Peter Jackson did a great job. No, but I read Fellowship for the first time all the way
Right.
through. And I'm actually glad that I was, a 33-year-old person who's been writing for a few decades before doing it, because I could really understand all of the stuff that went into what he was doing, the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, the whatever. I think the Tom Bombadil chapter is its strongest. Because
Okay.
it's the moment at which you really begin to understand the threat that these characters are under. Even though nothing happens in that chapter, except they're eating dinner because Tom is feeding them and whatever. And by the end of the chapter, they're being chased by the writers, and Tom is like, go, I've got this. But that gives you a sense of the weight of everything that's happening, because, yeah, they've been chased by these black writers on their own on the road. They don't know what's going on. But when they get in front of Tom Bombadil, and him and his wife, his wife is an elf, she's just this gleeful, la 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 la, and then all the hobbits are just kind of like, but, and suddenly Tom gets really serious and is like, but for real though, get that ring up out of my forest. This is not going to end well. Like, he's just,
Yeah.
and that's when the writers show up and they go, it's a moment at which you understand that Tolkien's really good. The more serious a character is when you meet them, the less likely they are to be good. Boromir. But the more like lighthearted, goofy, fun. I mean, Gandalf. You know.
I mean, that's a huge juxtaposition for fireworks at the beginning.
Yeah.
Addled old man. I mean, he has all this little thing. Like from a Dragonlance perspective, there's this Fizzban character who is the literal god of the good pantheon.
Yeah.
Represented by this like doddering old man who, what's that spell again? I forgot it. Always losing his hat. And then, so when I'm watching Lord of the Rings, because I watched the movies before ever picking up the books.
Oh yeah.
I'm seeing this, and then really, when you get to when they're in Moria, like some of this, particularly, that's when I feel like we get some of the best, and that film specifically, some of the best Gandalf.
Oh yeah.
The serious side of Gandalf, and then you realize like the Balrog, he's going up against like this thing's like the straight up minion of Satan, and
one of the biggest letdowns, having read Fellowship and then I watched it afterwards, one of the biggest letdowns of that film is Galadriel, because as stellar as, I mean, it's Cate Blanchett.
Yeah.
I mean, they could never have cast that
Queen.
better. For what the movie's trying to do, perfect.
Yeah.
But when you get to that scene in the Lothlorien chapter is actually my favorite, because so much happens in that chapter. So many character shifting things happen in that. It's there that that Legolas and Gimli become friends, because like lifelong friends, because they're trying to get into Lothlorien. Gandalf has just died. They're on the run from some orcs. No one knows who's in charge, and Aragorn basically is just like, go. They get there. The Lothlorien elves are like, y'all can stand there on the borders and look cute, but as long as that dwarf is with you, you're not coming in here. And yes, we will watch the orcs literally eat you, and then we'll kill them after they've done it. And Legolas, like, puts his bow in the face of the top guard and is like, you're letting us in here, because that dwarf's with us. And Gimli's, like, immediate, like, once they're in, Gimli's immediate response is like, you didn't have to do that for me. I'm really, really grateful. We're going to be best friends forever now. Yeah. Like, you know, stepdad to my kids. Like, it's a whole... but it's moving. Like, it's... Like I was choked up. I was like... Oh,
yeah. I forget about that scene.
That's huge... And that's the beginning of the chapter. There's so much left. And Galadriel, again, she's mirroring Tom Bombadil. She's light and airy and gorgeous. And
which makes that shift when she's... That test.
Yeah.
To Frodo... When I'm like, oof. And that still is such a beautiful scene.
It's great. Yeah. But in the book,
have you seen the film?
Boss.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Many times.
And we will talk about the films later a little bit, dear listeners, because we also have a TV show to at least watch the first couple episodes of. When we come back, hopefully, you know, there'll be at least two of us, I'm sure. Challenge. Watch.
I literally have Amazon Prime at home. I can watch it.
Okay, good.
It's fine.
Which, side note, like, I'm struggling with A League of Their Own and The Sandman right now because Erin and I have it as a packed show. Like, I've lamented many times to you. I have to wait and keep pace with her. No, Lord of the Rings, she doesn't care to watch. Which, it's fine.
Well, there you go.
I'm all about that.
It's just not going to work out.
It's going to work out. But we could. She likes Bill and Ted, so we're good.
Oh.
It is kind of even.
I don't know.
Okay, really quick. Just you've watched all three movies?
Yep.
And okay,
3.
Yeah, the three.
Thank you.
The 3 Lord of the Rings films that were produced.
But the books, have you?
I read the trilogy once.
And you've not?
In and out. Schools makes it very difficult for me to actually get into anything at all.
This is fair.
Yeah.
But do you have a favorite book amongst the trilogy? Like, Grant, do you have one?
Haven't gotten there. Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Gosh darn it, I keep forgetting that you...
I'll get there. There are passages of Return of the King that I have read, but you know.
But that's when you just say which one has your favorite cover.
There's so many covers.
Exactly.
Oh, the covers.
That's when you just say, which one's your favorite cover?
I'm always a fan of like when you look through like a book's history of like covers and stuff. I'm always usually a fan of like the more psychedelic 70s.
Yeah, those are fun, right?
Stuff. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the OG Lord of the Rings covers are actually pretty dope.
If I had to pick a favorite, going from my gut, maybe Fellowship. The same way that Fellowship might be my favorite of the movies. I feel like it can.
Oof.
Fellowship's my
I mean, it's
favorite
meant to be
movie.
watched. It's obviously meant to be one book and it's a trilogy, but I feel like if you were to hold up any one of the three movies up on their own merits, Fellowship would probably
Now,
stand up.
Why?
And I like the first, like third in the familiar, Hobbit world, and then like you said, it's a contrast when we get to like Moria and everything. Then stuff really gets real.
Yeah.
Especially and in the books, like if you had started with the Hobbit and everything, this is like the world growing up when Gandalf dies.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Spoilers! It's been out
Come
for
on.
years.
But you
Shut
know what?
up.
Honestly, the hardest chapter in that book for me was the chapter before they get to Moria. That whole business of them climbing up that mountain. I was like, if y'all don't get up off the snowbank mountain that you weren't supposed to be up on in the first place, like it was. There are funny parts, right? Like they're all being buried in snow, and like they look up, and Legolas is just like walking on the top of the snow, and Boromir's literally like, bro, really? Because him and Aragorn, who are basically described as these like tank characters, are like they're like Thor, basically.
Right.
They're like shoveling themselves through the snow with hobbits on their backs. It's hysterically described. And it's like, that's a great moment. I did not need an entire 20-page chapter for that one moment. It was, ugh. But then I read Moria and I was like, I'm fine. All right. Moria made up for it. I'm good.
This is going to tell you everything you need to know, but all I remember is there's a scene with some trees. Like the tall people trees.
I
can't.
No, I've tried to get my mother to watch that trilogy multiple times, but we always jump into it on TV at the same time, so she always sees it at the end of the Two Towers.
Oh,
when the trees are like so whenever I bring it up, she's like, "Oh, the trees." I'm like, "Oh God."
No, because it's just when I was a kid and like I was like not as into like those kind of things because I was more into my dance classes and stuff. Like I would be walking past, go into my room, my brothers would be watching it, and that's the scene that I remember because that's the scene I would walk in on. It's the trees, and that's it.
I mean, the trees are in a good portion of the second movie.
But that's all I remember is trees.
The end.
But they do have a good inclusion. Like I kind of maybe I want to say things, but like I need to reread the second book, Two Towers.
Do you have a favorite book?
I think historically
From your
have
fuzzy memory.
No, I think historically I've always really appreciated Two Towers.
Two Towers.
That's
good because that's up next.
That's been a very good one. In the movie too is actually probably my favorite of the three.
That's
a
common favorite.
That's I really can't. The problem with if I were sitting down watching movies right now, I'm watching all three.
Yeah, I can't do just one anymore.
Yeah. But again, I'll have to reread the book and the third book eventually, maybe sooner rather than later, because I'll be in this Lord of the Rings flavor town because of the show coming up. And I
Flavor Town.
Dinans. What's the show called?
Dine and Strive.
I want to see
Dine and Strives and Dies or something.
I want to see the Middle Earth version of it.
Guy Fieri comes on. Come on, guys! You're gonna stop in this little tavern here. So potatoes.
Honestly, I'd rather see the Middle Earth version than the Westeros version.
No, but like, listen.
Samwise Gamgee would be the one.
No, but listen. So he does the intro to the show, and then he drives in, and the place that he's going to is the tavern from that first chapter that you hate.
Oh my God!
And he walks in, and he walks
The end of the prancing
around,
pony.
and that's what starts the whole thing.
That's another chapter in Fellowship. The end of that whole area in like when they're in Bree.
Yeah.
Oh my! I was like, come on, because okay, it should be said. Now I haven't gotten to Two Towers and Return of the King yet. Fellowship Aragorn without anyone else, like if it's just Aragorn and the hobbits, I hate it. Because he talks, and he talks, and he doesn't talk about anything interesting. He is so boring.
Yeah.
It's so dull. And the hobbits won't tell him he's dull because they're freaked out. And they're not, like, they're caught in a rock and a hard place. Like, they're like, we don't know if we should be scared of the writers or of the guy that scares the writers.
Well, I think
we don't have any options here.
I think he's meant to be scary, at least at the onset.
Yeah, he should be scary. He's just boring. Like, he's so boring that by the time I got to the Council of Elrond scene, which is basically a giant conversation. It's a giant lore conversation. So literally, Elrond and Gandalf get into a 14-page argument. At the end of which Frodo is like, I think I got the grasp on this now. I'll take the ring to Mordor. And they're like, oh, thank God. Because the whole time, Gandalf's like, so when I was talking to Radagast the Brown, and then Saruman, and then Elrond's like, oh, shut up. We've already been over that. And he goes...
Now that you say it, it makes me think that your average work brainstorming session, like all these great ideas going around, but who's going to do it? No, I don't want to do it.
No,
right?
How
hilarious.
I visualize Tony's thinking experience of that is just like a giant parliament session, and they're arguing with each other, and then a fist fight breaks out, and that's just how it works.
Well, then there's one random interlude by Bilbo, at which point Elrond goes, stay in a child's place, and then keeps talking to Gandalf, and you're just like, I was like, Peter, where is this in the movie? This was so much more interesting. Like, that whole chapter is hilarious, because it's just Elrond and Gandalf talking about the first and second age that they both lived through.
I give Aragorn a little slack only because he's an 80-year-old man.
Elrond is older than that.
I didn't say Elrond. Oh, that's true. That's true.
So is Gandalf.
No, I said Aragorn. He's like
okay.
80-something years old.
Aragorn's like 80 to 100 years old.
Yeah, he's also like one of the youngest characters of the characters who lived before the third age. Because I think he was born like right at the end of the second age. Yeah, because their whole line was dwindling and all that thing. So
okay.
Oh, sorry.
Not yet. I have one more question because we are getting short on time. But why do you think?
Oh no.
We're out of animal crackers.
Why do you think The Lord of the Rings continues to resonate? Not just Lord of the Rings, but The Hobbit. Why do you think?
Well, because I'm short, and I like characters who are also short. So
that's a perfect.
Heard it there. All the short people are average height and resonate with the hobbits.
Supreme Overlord has decreed it.
I have actually been thinking about this a lot recently because I'm reading Eye of the World, which is. So, Robert Jordan's Eye of the World, which is the first of the Wheel of Time series, does everything that Tolkien did with Lord of the Rings, but in one book instead of three. And it's the first of a 14-book saga. So, like, Jordan wasn't playing any games. Like, he was like, oh yeah, I'll make a carbon copy of Lord of the Rings, but it'll be one book, Terry Brooks, not three. It's genius. But, I think, if you look at The Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Wheel of Time, Harry Potter, all of them have a similar, obviously there are modern versions of the hero's journey, but that's putting it a little too lightly, I think. What they do really, really fundamentally is they take the least likely individual in their perspective universe.
There's an underdog.
And pitches them against the absolute worst evil that world has faced. And you know they're going to win. You don't know how they're going to win, but you know that they have to win because that's the whole point of the structure. And there is something extremely rewarding. I remember, actually I said this on Facebook and then I did it. When the 2016 election results happened, I said online, I was like, everyone who is having a hard time adjusting to this, pull out your box set of Lord of the Rings, pull out your box set of Harry Potter, pull out your box set of Star Wars, watch it all the way through. It's time to marathon because those are the movies that teach you how to deal with moments like this. And I think that's why it still works, because we all have those moments in our life, either globally or personally, where
it's kind of like a David and Goliath story.
It is. It's exactly what it is. Like, we're the tiniest player on the board, and we want to get over there, but between us and that is Mordor. So, how do you get there? And these are blueprints that show you,
How did Little Bilbo's song go? Start. Out from the door. Wait, the road goes ever on and on. Out from the door where it began.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You start and end up somewhere, and just assume that you're gonna win, and maybe you will.
So, Supreme Overlord of everything and everyone and everywhere.
Yes.
What do you got for us today?
Well.
Also, that is the cheesiest you're ever going to get me to get on this podcast, because that was honestly really very cheesy, but it was also very honest. So
I added a couple, so I don't know what I'm going to pull out.
Oh, dear listeners, if you are used to staying to the end and listening to our smack, we're doing slight variations on a kind of a silly
We're doing
end
something
of the
new.
Podcast closer.
I don't know what any of these are. But I assume that these are ones that
What are you doing? What's the change?
So this is one of our new ones.
Okay.
And this is basically kind of a fight to the death. Which one would you pick in this option? Like, who would you pick?
Are we talking about like an actual physical fight to the death?
Well, I mean, you could do it that way, but like, which character would you rather have on your side in a fight?
Okay.
We have Dumbledore, and then we have Gandalf.
Oh.
I gotta do Gandalf. Cause he's
I literally put that down, and I laughed as I put it down.
So you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm listening to this book right now, I'm going to sub in Moraine Sedai and just cut those two out. Because she is
pretty...
bamf.
Yeah.
So, you know.
That's a Harry Potter one. We'll do it later.
But if...
Oh, did you want this one?
You're good.
I mean, if we're doing like Dragon Ball Z, like power levels, I feel like Gandalf's got to be
over 9,000.
Over 9,000, like a deal higher than.
Believe it or not, I literally actually just
think?
pulled open this one.
Gandalf or Dumbledore? Which one would you rather have in a fight?
I think because when he was sent to Middle Earth, he had a lot of his abilities locked.
Yeah.
Are you saying that?
Right. So that he can only level a full mountain instead of a mountain range, right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
So I feel like there's untapped potentials. Like if I had to, if he's going to be, I want Gandalf.
Yeah.
I guess it's like, are we getting Gandalf the Grey, Gandalf the White, like when he's full?
You can make your own
Saiyan?
clarification.
I mean, come on. Gandalf the Grey took on a Balrog.
No, I know he's already powerful. But
Like, I'm good.
I don't really care either way. But
Right.
like, I think maybe because we can sit down, we can have a good PBR.
I'm gonna
we
make
can
it
smoke,
worse.
you know,
Right.
some
Amendment. Which one would
Toby's
you
weed.
rather have then, Gandalf the Grey or Gandalf the White?
on your team, still Gandalf.
I'm gonna go with Gandalf the Grey because he's at this point like he's in high gear. He's still technically ready, but he's a little bit more homey at this point. Like the minute he goes white,
He like takes no prisoners.
like I don't want that level of seriousness. This is like the Ninth Doctor to the War Doctor, or any of the Doctors to the War Doctor.
Yeah, that's true.
So give me that Gandalf the Grey because I want someone who's going to go chill. We're going to go hang out with Bilbo. We're going to eat way too much.
Right.
He might yell at me occasionally, very frighteningly as well.
He might surprise, like, hijack me onto the back of an eagle. You know.
Right.
It's fine.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Because I do prefer Hobbit Gandalf to Two Towers Gandalf. So.
I think that's good because my other one actually is a reference to what Grant said earlier, but
Dragon Ball Z.
yeah.
Oh wow.
I literally have.
Yeah. Save it. Save it.
I'll save it.
Save it. Cool.
We'll pull it out eventually, and then you'll cackle when you realize what I put down.
Okay. We can't wait to see, you know, if you enjoy this podcast as much, but, you know, we'll see.
Oh,
We'll
you
see.
should.
You're going to love
If you
it.
don't, why not? You need to tell us,
Right.
like right now. Come
Actually,
to
I might even cut it off,
143
probably
East
during the
Maumee.
snack. I usually do
Tell
that.
us.
Like right
What
after
do we got?
the snack,
Yeah.
you sort of, yeah.
And we got Library Card Sign-Up Month. Starts tomorrow.
With Spirit Month?
Yes. Oh, I need to send out the email. Bad Hair Day is tomorrow.
I'm not here tomorrow.
Oh, never mind. And
I'll just come in how I usually.
what you do? How much growth do you have there?
It's kind of clownish.
Well, no, I was thinking like if it was like almost something you could like.